I'll admit that I used to wait till the last minute and rush to the store to buy some pre-made seed starting mix, but this year I decided to do some research and find out some other options. I wanted something that would be easy to make, eco-friendly, and budget-wise. So in this video, I'll let you in on what I discovered about pre-made store-bought seed starting mixes, and I'm also going to share with you and demonstrate my homemade DIY recipe. So hi, I'm Anne and welcome to my channel. I like to help home gardeners find creative and resourceful gardening ideas that are easy, economical, and also eco-friendly. So first of all, if you've never started seeds before, you're going to need a special seed starting mix. So this is different than ordinary garden soil or even potting mix. A seed starting mix is going to be very light and fluffy and have a fine texture. And the reason for that is because all of your little seedlings, like the ones I have here in my tray that I started, have very fragile roots. They're developing and you don't want to have any sort of barriers for those roots to go through the soil or your mix. So there's a lot of different reasons why you may want to use a pre-made store-bought seed starting mix. One of the first ones is it's really convenient. That's why I always did it in the past, because I didn't plan very well and I just had to maybe start a few seeds. I didn't need very much quantity, so I just went to the store and bought a bag of it. Now, when you do that, you're buying other ingredients in that bag of seed starting mix that you may or may not want. So most pre-made store-bought seed starting mixes are going to have a variety of ingredients. One of the main ingredients is something like compost. So the compost is something that provides the base. It's not actual soil, but it does contain certain nutrients that promote the growth of roots and seedlings. Next, you're going to have something like perlite or vermiculate, and those are mined resources that are added to mixes so that they can provide drainage and also something for the little roots to kind of attach to in the mix. Next, you're going to have something that's going to help retain moisture, and often you'll see an ingredient called peat. Lastly, you're going to see in the list of ingredients things like wetting agents and sometimes even fertilizers. And if you want a copy of the recipe that I'm making today, you can go to my newsletter, The Gardener's Companion. I have a link in the description if you want to sign up for free and subscribe to that, where I have an article about seed starting mixes in more detail, as well as my DIY recipe. So the recipe I'm going to make today has three main components. The first component is compost. Ideally, I would like to use compost from my garden. If you can't find compost, of course, you could buy compost from the store in a pinch. But the reason I like homemade is you're actually kind of curating your own microbes and nutrients because you know what you're putting in your compost, so you can feel good about what you're adding to that. It's also a resource that is sustainable because if you're always making your own compost, you've got that resource on hand. The next component I'm going to use for my homemade mix are rice hulls. Now here I have a bag and I'm going to measure these out to be about 30% of my total mix. The reason I use rice hulls is that they're a nice alternative to vermiculate or perlite. And the last component for your mix, which is going to make up about 4 parts of your total mix, is coco coir. This replaces traditional peat moss. The reason I don't want to use peat is, again, it's a non-renewable resource. It's harvested from bog areas around the world, and it's very environmentally damaging and can affect natural landscapes and wildlife, so I prefer not to use it. So you can buy coco coir in different ways. I bought it in these bricks. The bricks are 1.4 pounds, and one of these bricks will make 2 gallons of coir for your mix, so that's plenty. One thing about coir though is it is hydrophobic. So what that means is you have to moisten the cocoa fiber before you can add it to your finished mix. You don't want it to be overly wet, just moist enough. So you can measure out the different components however is easiest for you, but it's just good to remember that you want 1 part compost, 2 parts rice hulls, and 4 parts coco coir. You don't even need to add fertilizer to your mix. The main reason to not add fertilizer is because sometimes the fertilizer can be too strong and it can burn the little baby roots of your emerging seedlings. My best advice would be to wait to fertilize your seedlings until they are ready to pot out in the next size bigger pot. By then, the root system should be big enough that it can handle a diluted fertilizer mix. So one thing you can do, which also helps to make the texture of your seed starting mix more fine, is to use a screen. So I actually have a homemade screen here that's just made with cedar 2x4s and some poultry screening. Now, if you want an extra fine texture, you could add a little bit smaller screening with smaller squares on it, or add a double layer. If you do end up with any larger chunks in there, you could easily pick them out before you put it in your trays. I customized the screen to fit on the bin. And if you're curious about how to make one of these, I do have a free resource guide on the Gardener's Companion, and you can download that, print it out, and I will put the link below as well for that. So I have got this container. It's like an old cottage cheese container, and I use this for measuring all of my components. So in here right now I've got some compost, and I'm just going to put it on my screen. That way I can screen out stuff that I don't want in there. You can see I've got pieces of bark, some rocks and stuff like that, and that just lets the smaller ingredients pass through. And once you're done with that part of the screening, now you can add your other ingredients in and mix it all together. So once you get your mix all together, it should look something like this. Mine still has a few chunks in it from the compost, but what I can do is take my screen again and run this through the screen to make it even more fine. If your mix seems a little dry, go ahead and add a little bit of water to it. You don't want it to be overly wet and sopping wet, but you want it to be moist enough so you don't have to add a lot of water after you put your seeds in your seed trays with the mix. And if you're new to gardening and you're interested in learning about how to make your own compost, I've got a video for that, as well as a playlist of other useful gardening tips. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.